Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about working with these 9mm ARs. I find that they're a great benefit for training because you can shoot steel targets up close in a way that you cannot do with an AR-15 that shoots 223, 5.56, okay? Because usually with the AR-15s, I'm shooting at steel rims that are at least 30 yards away, or I'm shooting at paper targets, usually at a much greater distance. Trying to get, testing my accuracy, trying to improve my groups. But if I'm doing like close quarter combat style training, I have to be shooting at close targets, and I find that I hate working with paper because, first of all, you don't get that instant feedback. You don't know if you got hits on the paper until after you're done shooting and you walk up to the paper. So the shooter doesn't get that instant feedback. The instructor doesn't get that instant feedback. And the other thing is, if after you're done shooting, you got to keep changing the paper, which can become a big hassle, right? If you're on a tactical range that's where you have a trail that's, let's say, 300 feet long, and you've got targets at different points along that trail, and now you got to change the paper targets, each of those, whatever, 20, 30 paper targets, okay? So that's why I prefer to use steel targets for tactical training, because you get that instant feedback. You don't have to worry about changing the targets, and you can just keep everything moving, along really fast, okay? Now there is an issue with the 9mm rifles because they do not have that last round bolt hold open, okay? The last round bolt hold open is important because it does two things. Number one, it allows us to look in the chamber and make sure that we don't have a jam, okay? Because just because your gun is not working doesn't mean it's necessarily dry. There's also the possibility that you have a jam. So it allows us to look in the chamber, make sure we don't have a jam, and then it allows us to easily put the next magazine in. So the standard procedure with an AR, right, and even with the 9mm, we lock the bolt open, right? So when people say lock and load, that's what they mean. Lock the bolt open and load it. With the ARs, right, if you've got a 30-round magazine that's full and your bolt is forward, it can be really difficult to seat these magazines, right? A lot of times what will happen is people take that first shot and then the magazine will drop out. So that's why you want to lock the bolt open, put the magazine in, give it a tug to make sure that it's that it's in there, right? Now with the 9mm, what I find is that especially particularly on this rifle, right, on this PX9, putting the magazine in there, I find that there's less of an issue with it not catching and it falling out. So the workaround that I've come up with, right, is I will just download these magazines by 2 rounds. So instead of putting 17 rounds in there, I'm going to put 15 rounds in there or 14 rounds in there. Okay, it's going to facilitate the exercise. It'll make it run a lot smoother. I find that's a lot more efficient than trying to lock the gun open, in the middle of shooting. So let me go through that so you guys can understand what I'm talking about. Right, so I have here my AR, right? So I normally find it in this position here. The starting point is with the AR-15, we're gonna lock it open, put the safety on, right? Right, so now we're shooting 223 here, right? There's a standard AR magazine. Put the magazine in, tug it, make sure it's in there. I'm gonna run my charging handle. The reason why I typically run the charging handle is because when you run the charging handle, it pulls the bolt back a 1/4 inch, versus if you hit the bolt release, it just goes forward from that position. And what I have found is on some ARs, if you use the bolt release, it can cause a jam. On those same ARs, I noticed that when I use the charging handle, where you're pulling the bolt back another 1/4 inch, and it has a little bit more room to travel, I noticed that those same ARs don't jam up, okay? So I don't have to worry about what kind of AR I have. Do I have one that works with it or doesn't work? The procedure I have adapted is on all ARs, I run the charging handle because it seems to work better on all of them, okay? So I'm going to be shooting at those rims over there, which are at 30 yards, now normally when I'm shooting at those rims, basically I'm putting holes through them, okay? The rims will move a little bit, but I'm destroying the targets. I definitely don't want to be destroying my expensive steel targets, right? The rims I buy for like $5 or $8 a rim at the junkyard. The steel targets up here, they're like $60 to $100 each. So another reason why I don't want to be shooting these with 223. So I'm going to shoot the rims back there now with the 223. Right, so here we go. We come up, take the gun off safe, fire our gun stopped working, right? I'm going to turn it to the side, right? You can see the gun locked open. I see my chamber. I do not have a jam. I'm going to drop my magazine, right? Take the next one, put it in there, give it a tug, make sure it's in there, rub my charging handle, come up, empty, look in my chamber, drop my magazine, take the next one, put it in, tug, rub my charging handle, empty, okay? So that's the procedure that I'm going to use. Because the gun locks open on the last round, it allows me to look in the chamber, right? Make sure I don't have a jam. And it also allows me to easily seat the next magazine, okay? If you've got a jam and you put a fresh magazine in there, now you're going to create a bigger jam, okay? So let's put this aside. Let me pick up these mags. These Lancers are really great magazines. Highly recommend them. All right, so now we're shooting the Palmetto PX9. This gun does not have a last round bolt hold open, so we're going to have to work around that. So we are going to lock the gun open, right? Since that's kind of our standard procedure for the first round, right? So we're going to, safety's on. We're going to take our magazine, put that in there, give it a tug, make sure it's in there. Run the charging handle, same as we did before. Now I'm shooting at the steel target that's about 15 feet in front of me because I can do it, right? Couldn't do that with the 223, right? All right, empty, right? So now it's open, it's done actually, but I don't know if I have a jam in there or I don't have a jam in there. So the procedure is I'm going to drop my magazine, I'm going to pull back the charging handle, look in my chamber, it's empty. Put the next one in there, give it a tug, run the charging handle again. Right, so I've added one step. The step that I've added is I'm checking the chamber to make sure I do not have a jam. Right, so I've added one step, and these 9mm magazines, they seem to feed pretty well, you know, without locking it open. So since it's not an issue, I don't worry about it so much. Okay, right. Check the chamber, there's nothing in there. So I have found that that's the most efficient way to go through these tactical exercises with the 9mm ARs that do not lock open on the last round. Now, if you load, these are 17-round magazines. I've been downloading these by 2 or 3. So instead of trying to fit 17 rounds in there, I'll put you know, 15 or 14. And with the, you know, by downloading it by 2 or 3, that becomes less of an issue. They normally go in, you know, without much issue. So that's why, I mean, I had to make some compromise, and that's the compromise I've elected to make for the training exercise. Download the magazines by 2 or 3 rounds, and adding that extra step of opening up the chamber, you know, in my magazine change to make sure there's nothing in there. Now with these ETS magazines, you know, because you know, basically they're plastic magazines. The reason why I use them is because they're cheap. They're $10, and that's kind of important because a lot of times if I'm out in the woods doing these tactical drills, I'm dropping these magazines. They get lost, all right? So I don't want to lose like a $30 Glock magazine. I'd rather lose these you know, lose these $10 ETS magazines. So that's an important consideration with my training. You know, it has to be economical, right? So I'd rather be losing cheaper magazines. I'd rather be using cheaper 9mm ammo where I can. You know, so I mean, there's always a trade-off, you know. So, but that's the main thing I wanted to bring out. That's the step that I've added to make sure that I do not have a jam. And the point I think I was getting to and I forgot to make, because with these ETS magazines, because these are plastic feed lips, every time the bolt goes forward, it basically rubs up against these, and it does chew these up a little bit. Okay, so these magazines are consumable, and what that means is you will get jams. Okay, you will get jams usually on the last round. So if I got like 15 rounds in there, right, the first 14 rounds will feed, and then maybe the last one, the 15th one, I've noticed that has a tendency to jam on the way in, you know, so that's why I had to come up with a solution to making sure that the gun wasn't jammed before I put the next magazine in. If you're using Glock mags, you'll probably less likely to have that problem because they have the steel feed lips. But for working with these cheaper ETS magazines, which is an important consideration for me because, you know, I lose magazines. You know, sometimes I'll drop them. They'll stay in the woods for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and then eventually I'll recover them after they've been snowed on, rained on, stepped on. You know, so and then, you know, what am I do? I just keep using them. You know, if they work, they work. If they don't work, you know, and then throwing them away. But the point is, because these magazines are abused like that, you know, there's a higher chance that I'm going to get a jam with the 9mm magazines, and I needed a procedure to be able to deal with that efficiently. And the change that I made is between my shots, between my magazine changes, I'm gonna manually open up the bolt and look at it. I got 2 more mags. Let's do that one more time. So again, initially when we start off, we lock the gun open, we put the safety on just like we would do with an AR, right? So we're not changing that procedure. Put it in, give it a tug, set it charging, the bolt home, take my 2 shots. Let's see. Gun's empty, drop the mag. Okay. Look in the chamber, make sure there's nothing in there. Put the next one in there. Charging handle again. Right. Mag out. Check the chamber. Excellent. So I hope this video is useful to you guys. You know, it's a nice, easy workaround. The fact that a lot of these 9mm ARs do not have a last round bolt hold open. There are some companies out there that do make 9mm ARs that do have that feature. They tend to be either a lot more expensive, or which is fine. You know, I mean, you know, that's fine if that's what you want. Or they tend to be less reliable, which is not fine, right? So between the two, I'd rather go. If I have to have the last round bolt hold open, I want to make sure I'd rather make sure I get one that's really going to work. Okay, because I have seen a couple of 9mm rifles that have that feature, but they have had problems with it. I've seen people that, you know, I've trained that have bought those guns, and they have had some issues with them where they had to go back, you know, parts had to be changed, repairs need to be made. So I've actually seen it firsthand that can be problematic. But this is a nice little workaround that you know, allows you to work with a 9mm AR, does not have the last round bolt hole open, but yet you can still do 99.9% of the work that you would normally be able to do with your AR-15. So if you guys have some experiences of your own to share, put in the comment section. Any recommendations, anything you think I should try out? You know, I'm always open to new ideas. You know, maybe you've got a better way of doing this. I don't know. You know, drop some comments below. I'm eager to hear your ideas. If you're not a member of my channel, subscribe, hit that bell button. I'll talk to you guys again soon.